My name is Yajweh. I am making these tapes because I am about to do something that, quite frankly, I don't know if I'm going to come back from, and I want my story told the way I want to tell it. I've started and stopped recording this now dozens of times, and so forgive me if I meander a little bit here at first. I'm planning on making them 9 sessions. This is number 1, and my hope is that within the body of those 9 sessions, my story will be told. I reside right now on planet Earth, among the humans. Hello, everyone. I have been here now in Earth years about, 3,500. Forgive me for not being exact. Time works a little bit differently for me than it does for you. The planet that I am from is a planet near the center of the galaxy, our galaxy, the Milky Way, you call it, which is a galaxy that is teeming with life, some new, like you, and some very old, like me. The planet that I am from is heavily forested with trees that have grown for what would be hundreds of thousands of Earth years. When I was a child, my earliest memory is looking up at a greenish sky that we have there, and having my mother explain to me that my father had been killed. My parents, my mom, she was a school teacher, I assume still is. She taught linguistics, for lack of a better term. She taught languages. My father was the equivalent of a forest fireman. Fires on my planet are common, but there are trees that must be protected at all cost because they hold within them the history of our people, of our planet, of everything that has ever happened there, much like Aboriginal Dreamtime here on Earth. She gave me that day a small piece of wood, maybe 6 or 7 centimeters high, 2 or 3 centimeters in diameter, with a hole bored through the middle, almost like a marshmallow from the circular sides, a hole bored through. She told me it was called a Nodoxquai, and that Nodoxquai was a key used to communicate with some of the ancient groves of trees on my planet. And the reason why the middle was missing is that this was taken from one of the oldest trees that had died, and that no one could ever, they couldn't risk someone, whether through nefarious means or accidentally, coming across that core ancient knowledge from the first days of our planet. I subsequently learned that it's actually not that interesting, especially not from an earthling's perspective. But my father had died protecting some of the most ancient trees in the galaxy, trees through which a force of life flows that is deeper than any ocean, more vast than the universe itself, it seems at times to me. And I was then, as the eldest, given the opportunity to follow in his footsteps. I chose not to. I chose this on my own after finding out, all the different parts the different pieces that taking on that job would entail, and feeling that my younger sibling would be better suited to serve the needs of my people and carry on my father's proud tradition. So I instead chose to follow, under the tutelage of my mother, linguistics, and became fascinated with some of the ancient rituals and the old cultures that exist in our galaxy. Species who have been around in Earth year equivalent hundreds of millions of years. You can't imagine in an earthly context the amount of knowledge that has been amassed by these cultures. What we sometimes ask ourselves here as the deepest questions fathomable are the stuff of children's books to them. But I began my studies, and as I began pursuing this field, I became aware of a transition that was happening on a planet called Nibiru. The planet of Nibiru was seeing the end of the house of the sixth emperor, who was, with respect, a bloody tyrant to any species with whom he came in contact. He was a shoot first, ask questions later type being to the extreme, blinded by his greed and lust for power. And his health was bad, and his time was soon to pass. And the seventh emperor of Nibiru was somebody who I knew from school. The guy that was in line, it's not sons, it's part of a certain, I guess, family dynasty would be the way to term it. He had passed all the tests, he had met with the councils there, and he was in line to be Emperor 7. And he wanted to change back the course of his people. He wanted to rekindle the days when Nibiru and the Anunnaki were known for their great generosity and their ingenuity, their ability to problem solve in creative ways to help other species, other races, other planets, instead of this lust that had overtaken their house. The people of Nibiru love gold. It is something that is much like carbon is to people on Earth and water. Gold is to the Anunnaki of Nibiru. It is essential for life. It contributes to their very makeup of both them as physical entities and their surroundings. And this planet, Earth, which I always knew before as Delta Sol, had, by galactic standards, an easily accessible supply of gold. And when he became Emperor 7, he said he wanted to form a team to go to Delta Sol and learn more about the cultures there, that there would be 9, and that he had researched the proto-cultures that existed at the time. He knew where they would be placed, during which times they would be placed. He said that we would be chosen based upon unique skills, and that he wanted me part of this team because I have the ability, I guess, to see both sides. I think I get that from my initial studies being in language. When you study language, there's not a good or a bad. It's just a translation. It's finding common ground. It's finding a way to make one make sense in an equivalent fashion with the respective other. And I love translating. I've taught Vince a lot of it. Prince has no interest in it, but I've tried to teach those who want to know. I was sent to Earth as part of this team. What he did was, the sixth emperor of Nibiru was a cruel leader. When the seventh emperor's time came, he wanted to shift the perception of his people, both on and off world. He wanted the community around him to understand, in no uncertain terms, that there was a shift in paradigm there that had occurred with his taking over. And by sending this team to Earth, the goal was simple. We would like the people of Earth to supply us with as much gold as they can, and we would like them to do this in a way that will accomplish three things. Number one, we would like them to enjoy their toils. We would like them to have a taste of what technology can bring them in the form of leisure, in the form of advancement, in the form of betterment of life. Number two, we would like the people of Earth to be prepared for being brought into the community of worlds in our galaxy. And the seventh emperor of Nibiru, of the Anunnaki, and you'll have to forgive me, people who know that I should know better, the formality with which I speak has lessened as my years on this planet have waned. I choose to speak English because it is right now the most commonly understood language on your planet. I try to speak simple English, I guess I should say. I try not to use an accent. And I do this for a very specific purpose. My communications with many of those that you would consider the global elite are done in different languages with a different voice. I can speak however I want. I choose to speak this way. Now, so the first thing was he wanted the people of Earth to basically like gathering gold for them. Number two, he wanted somehow to get them ready to join the galactic community and have himself be able to take some credit for that. As, you know, look what I did. Look at this contentious species that was always looked at as just too primitive and twisted and just culturally inept to be brought in. Look where I have brought them. And the third thing that he wanted to do was kind of, I guess, grander in scope. And that was that he wanted to introduce religion on a global sense to the people of Earth. He wanted the people of Earth to believe in something more than what they were. There is no easy way to explain what God is, even for the ancient ones. But God does exist. Surely you know this. There is we anthropomorphize God into some kind of a human, white bearded figure, depending on which culture you're from, of course. But there is a quote-unquote God. There is a quote-unquote devil. Some call that polarity, a positive and a negative. Some call it light and dark. Some call it hot and cold. Some call it up and down. Some call it left and right. Some call it inside or outside. The force that you feel pulling you one way versus the force that you feel pulling you the other, and the constant striving for balance that we feel as humans is what makes us humans. And I know I said us, and I don't want to be confusing here, but I've been part of your race for a long time. I've seen very, very horrible things done. And I've also seen very, very wonderful things done also. And I try to keep that in balance. Day to day, moment by moment, day by day, is how I try to live. That's all you can do. So, with these three things in mind, when the 6th emperor passed and the 7th emperor came to the throne, myself and 8 others were brought in and given a presentation, I guess might be a fun way of explaining it, of His Excellency's plan. And it was grand in scope, and not one of us turned him down. All 9 who were brought in to come here accepted their mission with sincere hearts. We have tried to do our best. So, what happened was, he said, basically, I'm going to try to explain this as easy as I can without rambling, and I know I ramble. He's going to send us each to a different area of Earth at a different time in history. And this is the part where people get hung up. Time travel is, of course, possible. Einstein was dead on when he talked about, as soon as you go faster than the speed of light, you're basically going back in time. Now, one of the big things that can bend light is gravity. And there has been a lot of science done on gravity. That's how, quote-unquote, UFOs get around. Is gravity, like anything else, is a series of equations that can be on a base level manipulated and should only be attempted by people who very much know what they're doing. Let's put it that way. So we arrived on this planet. We had been instructed very simply. We had, I guess, the equivalent in Earth time would have been about a year of training. We were trained by individuals from various species, various races. And I say species and races because there are species who are not sentient. They don't choose to participate in the community of worlds, and that's fine for them. There are some that visit here that you'd want to be aware of. The menacing Greys are one of them. Let me tell you a little story about the Greys. Let me sidetrack here for a second. You know why the Greys are so popular here? It's because they make themselves popular. They seek nothing more than fame and attention. The Greys come from a planet very near my homeworld. They know I do not fear them. They know they don't want to mess with me. We have been the rounds over the years. They have tried to take individuals with whom I was working at the time, which is unacceptable. They have done grotesque modifications of humans over the years that have resulted in crazy myths and legends being spun as a consequence. They do this to toy with you. The Greys seek nothing more than your attention. The Greys are here for one reason and one reason only. They like to cause trouble and dissension. They like to cause chaos. They are a very ancient species, and I use the term species here because I do not consider them sentient. And here is why. They don't think on an individual level. They've been empathic for so long that I'm one of the few people I know that can really understand what they're actually saying. They work from a common collective that has existed for millennia as a source of destruction in the galaxy. I'm asked all the time, why are they not just wiped out? The powers that be here on Earth ask me that on a monthly basis. Isn't there anything that can be done? The reason the Greys are not wiped out is because long ago a rule was, an unwritten law, we can call it, was set into motion that basically says you do not kill anything. What the force of life that exists in plants, trees, people, rocks, water, the sky, stars, even the menacing Greys, comes from the same spring. Playing judge, jury, and executioner is what the negative side, the devil side, wants you to do. What the positive side, the God side, wants of us, and this is known, this is not my opinion, this is known, is that we find balance, we find ways to compromise and live in peace. My views on the Greys are not universally held. There are some who find value in their technology. They are one of the species who understands gravity very well. Their work has arguably brought good, but I have seen them torment the human race for too long to stand silent. But I don't want to get sidetracked. We went, the training lasted about a year, and basically what we were taught was what the Akashic record showed was what had happened on Earth, what was happening now, what was going to happen. And let me explain the Akashic record very quickly because I get asked about this a lot. Edgar Casey made a big deal out of it. He was a tormented guy, to put it lightly. There exists in our galaxy a record, if you will, of everything that has ever happened, is happening now, and ever will happen within a certain scope. And let me explain that scope. Number one, alternate timelines. Alternate timelines don't exist. That's the kookiest science fiction nonsense I've ever heard. And Michio, if you're listening to me right now, next time we meet up, I have got the equation figured out. Yes, I got it figured out. I'm going to show you, and you can put it on your little science channel show. There is only one timeline. Because when you travel backwards or forwards through time, so to speak, when you time doesn't cease to exist for you as you travel. When you get there, you don't have the experience you would have had over those years that you missed. Your brain goes with you, folks. Because we're all connected on a base level, here you would call it on a spiritual level, or your souls are interwoven like fractals. Because everything is connected, it's all the information is coming to a central source. The process of cataloging this information, as you can imagine, is intense. The process of accessing this information is beyond comprehension for most people, for most humans. You have to use, I guess the way to describe it would be, you'd have to use a different part of your mind, one that most of you have shut off by your respective cultures around the time you learn how to talk and walk. You're born with it, but that part of your brain is never used, and it shrivels up and dies, really. People who have this ability are able to, what's the best way to describe this without sounding really corny? Catch a glimpse, I guess, of bits and pieces of things that have happened, things that are going to happen, things that are happening now. The part about the future, a lot of people find very tricky. But it's no different than the past or the present. Do you know everything that's going on right now? Right now. Your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter, your friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, boss, neighbor. When they're not in the room with you, do you know what they're doing? They're still doing it, right? Doesn't mean it's not happening. Unless you're one of those people who believe that when people leave the room, everything ceases to exist except for what you're experiencing right now. Which is, again, a unfortunate side effect of the common culture on this planet. That's why the Emperor Seven, that's why we were asked to bring, I guess, religion here. Each of us were thought of as prophets in our day. Each of us 9. Yeshua was Jesus. I get asked a lot about Muhammad. Muhammad was not one of the 9, but Muhammad was a good man. I never knew him personally, but I can tell you from folks that I have known over the years who did have contact with him, back then when they were alive, and the couple of us who did meet him, his agenda was clean. He wanted to bring order to a world that had none. He strived for balance. Sure, he had his own way of expressing that agenda, but his intentions were pure. The ancient religions on this planet believed the gods must be satiated with sacrifice because they believed that the most powerful thing was going with, giving up something that you cherished. Let me try to explain this. This is worth taking a moment and trying to explain here. The ancient cultures of Earth lived in a world where a freak storm was thought to be the work of the angry gods, where disease, a bad yield of crop, was thought to be the work of angry gods. What, for them, what could they do to show the gods how sorry they were, or how much they loved them, how devoted they were? What could they do? They had to part with something they believed that was dear to them. Now, that could be, in the old days, a sharp rock, a stick that you'd use to hunt with that had brought you luck, that you could throw into a bog or throw into the sea. By giving up this item, this thing that you held dear, that your existence depended on, and casting your salvation to the gods, it was thought that you gave them the respect they required of you for them to grant their blessings. Then, as proto-humans started to, I guess, develop agriculture would be the term to use. Animals were very prized because of meat, hides, obvious reasons. And they were sacrificed because this was thought of as pleasing to the gods. And when they started doing human sacrifices, that's when a lot of attention got drawn to this planet on a galactic sense. Because, again, the unwritten law in our galaxy, the one that everyone abides by, that's worked for millions and millions of years, is we don't kill each other. We try to find balance. We try to find peaceful ways to coexist. Because on a base scale, everybody wants the same things. Sorry, my throat's getting dry. So, when we were asked to bring religion here, it was a very touchy subject because we had to change minds. We had to convince people somehow that there was something beyond their existence, some other reason to be good. It's funny in Western culture, at least, when kids are young, they got the tooth fairy. They find out that's not real, but there's still Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Be good and you'll get a Christmas present. They find out that's not real. The next logical progression is God. Well, everybody tells me be good and God will send me to heaven. What if that's not real? That's the kind of mindset we were up against when we began, I guess, proselytizing back in the days. We were given permission to... People thought they were miracles. People thought we were magic. And we brought them along, kicking and screaming, some of them, dragging their culture away from the histories of violence that some of these had lived in, and tried to instill in them, each in their own respective way, a simple notion. Don't go around judging people. Don't kill people. Find ways to find common ground. There are things among you that are different. But on a base scale, when you peel back all these tertiary things that in the grand scheme of things don't really matter, we all want the same stuff, We all want us and ours to be taken care of and happy, and roof over our head, food in our belly, find some purpose in our life, find something that we're passionate about, and be able to explore and do that. And a great many of us also feel the need to embetter society in doing that. There are those who seek for nefarious purposes power, money. Those people, they will never be satiated. The thirst that they have cannot be quenched. And let me explain what hell is. Hell is, after you die, thirsting for whatever it is you search for now that's not of a spiritual nature. Let me give you an example. If you're an alcoholic and you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, get a drink, what are you going to do if you pass and no longer have a physical body to imbibe that alcohol? If you're a drug addict and your every waking thought is, how am I going to get my next fix? When you're gone, without a physical body, How are you going to do that if you're addicted to sex? If you're addicted to pornography? If you have desires that you don't let anyone else know about because you consider them too personal, but nonetheless they devour you daily, how are you going to exist in peace when you no longer have a physical body to satiate those wants and desires? The same thing comes from too much comfort from your money. Those of you who are wealthy, have you forgotten the keys to the kingdom? Have you forgotten what keeps us in business? Do you know what I mean by that? What I mean is, you don't need a house with 3 bathrooms and 7 rooms. You don't need 2 cars. You don't need to consume the resources that you consume on this planet. Everything in your home was shipped from one place to another on a truck that spewed out pollution, packed with styrofoam that stays around for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. And even those of you who think you're green or who are environmentally conscious, the house you live in is made of wood, is it not? Or concrete that was ripped from the earth? How many of you right now, if the shit hit the fan and everything came crashing down around you, how many of you could survive out there? Not talking about people trying to take your stuff. I'm not talking about some apocalyptic doom, which, may very well be a real possibility to some extent. But what I'm talking about here for our discussion is, could you survive? Could you find water that you could drink? Could you find food? Could you make a fire if you had no matches? Could you build shelter? Do you know anything at all about how to make your own clothing? Or would you be able to kill an animal and use their skin to keep warm? What would you do? Ask yourself this as you fall asleep tonight. Ask yourself, if everything ended around me and I had to exist just with myself, would I be comfortable? Would I be content? Would I be happy? Because that's how you prepare yourself for death. That's what we tried to teach people in the ancient times. We said there is a hereafter, one which you can control. The gods are not forces who have a will of their own, who can conspire against you when they're angry, and who can bless you when they are pleased. There's one side that wants good, and there's one side that wants bad. We're all caught in the middle. Every one of us. The trillions and trillions of beings throughout the galaxy are all caught in the middle of this force. We all struggle to find our place in the stream, where we're not being pulled one way or another, where we can stop and float a while, look up at the sky, and relax. That's what we're all looking for. And on an earthly scale, the people here, a lot of them, had never thought that way. What they thought was, my existence is hard. Every day, I don't know if I'm going to get enough to eat. I don't know if I'm going to survive the next storm. I don't know where I'm going to, if all of a sudden people start getting sick and dying, am I going to survive that? It was constant worry. A lot like it is now, I guess. But we brought religion here to this planet because it seemed like a good thing to do at the time. I'm trying to be honest. Sometimes in the spirit of candor, I say things that perhaps I should take back. We wanted the people of Earth to start appreciating the simple fact that they are alive. Do you know you're alive? You listening right now, do you know that you're alive? Do you know that you are within your soul, your spirit? You are capable of everything you can possibly imagine? When you dream at night, do you fly? Who are the people around you in your dreams? Do you wake in fear of going back to sleep, or do you wake wishing you could go back into that dream time and experience that feeling again? Because this may be hard for some of you to hear. That's what's going to happen when you die. Just like when we dream, that's what happens when you die. You have to get yourself in balance. And the way to do this that I have found helpful in my experience with humans on Delta Soul is by trying to step back from both the things that are going good for you and the things that are going bad for you. And let me give you an example. Let's say your job is the shits. Sorry, I don't like to curse. Let's say your job is awful. But let's say you have a loving family. Then everything's fine on the home front, or vice versa, okay? You feel almost sometimes like you're two different people, don't you? You're one person at work where you feel like you have to be a jerk. You have to be on edge to be successful, to survive in that environment. And then when you go home, you feel almost like you have to flip that switch off and be a nice person. Or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe you have trouble at home and you feel like at home you have to be a disciplinarian, or you have to be tough. You have to put your foot down because that's the only area of life you feel like you have control. And maybe in your work or your professional life or your school, you feel you have no control. You're just a technician. You're just a cog in the wheel, and you're trying to do your best. Step back from that for a minute, because none of it matters. When you dream at night, do you dream thinking, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to get a new car? How am I going to pay my credit card bills? If you do, you've got to figure out a way to reclaim your soul. You've got to dive deep within yourself. You've got to get back to the person, the being that you were when you were just a child, before all the evil and sick, twisted stuff that goes on in this world happened to you. Get back to that and try to start again from there. Every baby is perfectly balanced. Everyone perfect. There is no original sin. We are born pure. We are born with everything pre-wired, hard-coded, if you will, into our brains. I'm trying to speak in human terms. It's all there. You just have to remember it. And I know it's difficult to put aside the real concerns of life, because I know that a great many of you have people who are dependent on you, your children or whomever. What I ask that you try is that at night, before you go to sleep, or if you sleep during the day, whenever, before you go to sleep, try to clear your mind. Try this. Try thinking of a very, very large piece of clear white paper that seems endless. Just imagine trying to find the edge of that paper. Put your mind in a loop. You're just looking for for something that doesn't exist anyway, put a face on it. Call it the white paper. But clear your mind before you go to sleep at nights. When you dream, if you fly, come and see me. Call my name. As you fall asleep, think of me. Think of my voice. Put on this tape and listen to it. I am Yahweh of the Anunnaki, and I am here to help the people of this planet. Because in the 3,500 plus years, Earth years that I have been here, I've developed such good friends. I've seen your people grow in exponential terms. Let me give you one example. A long time ago, I lived on the island of Fiji, near Suva. There was an old man in the village who had come to the village from the sea, who did not speak the language, who had, for lack of a better term, washed up on shore one day with no provisions in a busted-up canoe, and who was taken in by the village. He was old. He didn't speak the language. He had learned some of the verbiage, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. He'd learned somewhat how to communicate. But he was old. He was nice. He kept to himself. He fished. He didn't require really anyone's assistance. But he had in his possession around his neck a medallion, very shiny. And the people all coveted this medallion. So even though they couldn't communicate with him, they all tried to do nice things for him, thinking that when he passed, they could claim it as theirs, as their inheritance, or he might bequeath it to them, or somehow give it to them. But it's very hard to do nice things or to brown nose or to kiss up to somebody who does not need your assistance, to someone who requires very little. One of the young children in the village used to bring this gentleman every day a rock from the beach and place it on his doorstep. And he did this for years. And one day, he brought the man a rock and put it on his doorstep. And the man took the rock, held it high, and smashed it with a bigger rock, some implement. It was a geode. Inside, the boy had never seen, I don't remember, now I'm trying to think of the story. I don't remember if it was a little boy or a little girl. Anyway, the child had never seen something so cool. And had to explain to the villagers what had happened. They believed that a god had done this. They believed, after the child had told them, that the man who wore the shiny medallion around his neck had given this to him, or had broken a rock open and shown this to him. They believed that he must be a god, and changed from just trying to be nice to him to obsession, bringing him food, bringing him gifts. People brought their daughters, trying to get him to marry them and impregnate them. The old man wanted none of this. So he left the island. I would assume he just went to a different part of the island and took up residence there until his days expired. But the man was not Fijian. The man was Incan. And he was from the city of Machu Picchu. and he had gotten lost on an expedition at sea, and he was the only one who had survived. And he had come to live in Fiji, and their languages were very different, their cultures were very different. And around his neck, he wore an emerald, just an emerald necklace with gold. But of course, the Fijians had not seen anything like that, and they thought of it as magical. Now, the point to this story is this. Up until that time, I had this perception of the people of Earth as barbaric, I guess. You were beneath me. You were something I was studying, or I was here to help out. I felt pity, but not on a real sense of compassion. It was more out of a duty or obligation. This person was allowed to live and exist. He could have been, the people there could have gathered together and knocked the guy out and taken his possessions. They could have killed him. Why didn't they? Well, because that would have been considered inhospitable or impolite. He was a guest. He came from the sea. What would they want if they washed up on someone's beach? They would want to be allowed to exist. The prospect of finding your way back home may not be feasible, but you would want to be allowed to exist. And it changed my paradigm on the human race. I realized for the first time, you people are not animals. You are sentient beings who feel the pull from both sides. But you understand that positivity and love and good is the way to go. On a base level, you understand that. Most of the people I've met on this planet who consider themselves quote-unquote devil worshippers or practicing the dark arts, they may wear dark clothing and slick their hair back and have very pale complexions, some of them. They do so out of rebellion. They feel that they are choosing the negative over the good, typically as some kind of a spite against an authoritarian parent, perhaps from the past, or someone who at some point in their life made them feel stupid, made them feel unimportant, because they had cast their judgment upon them. And they want to prove to everyone that they are different and unique. And friends, each and every one of you is different. Each and every one of you is unique. But each and every one of you is also part of the same spring. You're all part of the same, on a base level, of the same soul. We're all branches from the same tree. Whatever little metaphor you want to attach to it. We're all in this together. And I began to realize that the people of Earth were more advanced than certainly the Anunnaki and those on Nibiru who had organized the expedition had initially understood. But even myself as a professional, considering myself an expert on interstellar anthropology, I became fascinated. This was something that I could know that no one else in the galaxy would know. I would be greedy, but under the guise of good. I'm the only one who will know all of these things, who will understand this culture. Yes, it's the Seventh Emperor's idea to bring these in, but I will be the ambassador, so to speak. And I became a little full of myself for a while. I was only humbled when the Romans brutally murdered my friend Yajweh, hung him to a cross. Why? Because they feared that he was undermining the fabric of their society. If he could provide people sustenance through his words, if people could embetter themselves and those around them for the sole intention of making the world a better place, why on earth would you need the state? Why would you need a government taxing you, controlling you, regulating your trade and your lives, if everybody was working for the common good? Governments exist partly because evil exists on this planet. You take care of the evil, you people don't need traditional governance. So a lot of the people who seek power on this planet, a lot of the people who govern this planet, seek conflict. They ferment it. They whip you into a frenzy. 5 companies control your media. Yeah, no matter where you are on the planet, 90+% of everything you hear on your quote-unquote news channels through 5 different locations on the globe. If we don't fight against one another, why do we need to pay politicians to globetrot and eat fancy food and go to fancy parties and decide what's best for the rest of us? We only need that if there's war and conflict going on. And let me tell you, there have been more times in the history of your planet, but let's just talk about the last 14,000 years. There have been more times that peace was about to break out and was quenched with war than vice versa. Most people yearn to be free. Most people yearn for a peaceful existence. And I say most people because there are those out there who, young souls mostly, who seek not to understand but to be told. They don't want wisdom, they want knowledge. They don't want to read the book, they want to just read the inside cover and then talk about it at cocktail parties. There's nothing you can do about those folks. There's nothing. I've tried. I've spent, better part of 35 plus centuries trying. You just need to walk away from those type of people. It's interesting. I know on these tapes I've been doing, Vince tells me all the time people are saying, they don't believe it or prove it or something like that. Well, it's been going on for a long time. People come to their rabbi, their imam, their priest, preacher, whoever, a position of authority in their respective faith, and come with the question, often very humbly, almost afraid to ask, is there any proof that God exists? Is there any proof that this book I've read my whole life is accurate? What do the good ones tell their flocks? They tell them the same thing Yeshua told them 2,000 years ago. The truth, you will know the truth when you see it. You will know it because it will tug at your very soul. You'll feel drawn towards it. It will offer you comfort and warmth and a feeling that everything makes sense, even if it's a fleeting moment. You'll chase after it the rest of your life. That feeling that everything around me is happening for a reason. It has happened. It will happen for a reason. I am not just floating down this torrentious river. I am a part of the river. Every move that I make affects the outcome downstream for every other molecule of water in that body. And once you grasp that, you no longer ask for quote-unquote proof. Now, for those of you who want proof, I promise you, by the end of the 9 sessions, I will have more proof shoved at you than you'll know what to do with. And you can choose whether or not you want to share that with other people. My concern is not for the masses. My concern is for those who seek to find me. I would like to tell you my story before I go. I was given the chance in October of 2010 to enter into negotiations as a liaison on behalf of the 7th Emperor of Nibiru, with his blessings, mind you, and was given the opportunity to choose one member of my team to accompany me. I chose Yajweh, who was, when the Romans killed him, when the Romans crucified him, he was taken to a tomb where he was laid to rest, and 3 days later, he rose from the dead and ascended into heaven. And that was a ceremony that I am, to this day, honored to have been a part of, to have been there for. I saw, once again, the compassion that dwells within the hearts of men. I saw, at the same time, the apathy, the insubordinate naivete that exists in men who believe that somehow because they are respected, or somehow because they have creature comforts, are above their brothers and sisters. So I chose Yajweh to come back with me. He'll be here in a couple of weeks. I have not spoken to him in about 2,000 Earth years. We'll have a lot to catch up on. He's not going to like a lot of what he sees when he comes back that's been done in his name. And I am going to do my best to explain this whole concept, this Judeo-Christian myth and lore surrounding his quote-unquote second coming and the one you call the Antichrist. It's interesting what pieces of truth make it through the years, survive the edits of your books, and what pieces of information are left on the cutting room floor. The Antichrist is an ancient myth, I guess, that we, my team, I hate saying this, we didn't implant the myth. We took an old myth that your culture had and just spruced it up a bit. Basically, the story goes like this. On Earth, people believed at the time that actual demons existed. In other words, monsters, something like that. It was believed that these demons would devour you in such a way where they would consume your spirit, and that was they could actually damage not just you but your entire clan, your entire family by doing this. And so people would be found sometimes mauled by a bear, for instance, and they would have the legend spun around that they were attacked by this demon, and in that somehow their clan was cursed, and they would do all kinds of crazy things. The way around that in many of these cultures was to go out and fast until you had a vision. They called it different things, but it was basically you'd go out and you'd fast yourself into hallucinating a vision. And in these visions, depending on which way people were pulled, because most people are out of balance, they would either see a bright light or deep dark, demonic hell. And as to, again, it's human nature. You guys like to anthropomorphize everything and create something that looks like you attached to it. So a devil was spawned out, and on the other side, a god was spawned out. And what we did was we took what was going on at the time when they killed Yeshua, and we said basically that these demons, or the father of these demons, the master of these demons, would come back one day and take over the earth, and only Yeshua coming back could save you from this. And we did this because we thought at the time this is going to start the biggest religion this planet has ever experienced, and it started a big one. Christianity it's survived the test of time. And am I running out of time, Vince? How much? Okay. About 10 minutes, he says. So I'm going to try to wrap things up on this first tape. So again, to summarize, my name is Yajweh. I am from a planet that is very near the center of the Milky Way galaxy. On my planet, because of the gravitational forces there, things grow. Everything, the rocks, the trees, the beings like me that live there, we grow slowly. Our gestation period, for instance, would be the Earth equivalent to thousands of years. By the time I was born, I had the Earth equivalent of, like I say, 2,000 years of my mother's experience that I had been experiencing in her, so to speak, womb. Not saying I was born full-sized, but things are a bit different on at home. But nobody cares about that. When I was in school, I was very good at both language and ancient culture and ritual. One of my friends at university on Nibiru was in line to become the 7th Emperor of Nibiru. He gathered a team, myself being one of them, and 8 others respectively, a team of 9, and sent us here to Delta Sol, to Earth, where we were given the task of getting the people of Earth to work for the Anunnaki and do so willingly. We wanted to help bring them up to speed, so to speak, technologically, and I guess on a base knowledge sense, so to speak, to be assimilated into the community of worlds in our galaxy, what we call the Milky Way, and to kind of throw the wild card into the bunch to create some different, what we would now call religions, to give people a pull towards the common good, basically. We didn't start these to start wars. That's humans did the wars. I don't know of, I know I have certainly never done anything intentionally to cause one society to do battle with their neighbor. I'm pretty sure that my 8 companions and peers, they never did anything, or have never done anything. I think I just had an epiphany. Okay, I need to finish up. I am going to try to explain everything. I'm going to try to explain what has happened on this planet over the course of the last 14,000 years, in particular the last 3,500 years that I have been here. I am going to explain both myself and the 8 others who came here, a little bit about each one of us, why we were here, what our particular expertise were, some of the stories that I've heard as we've gotten together over the years, and kind of shared experiences of what we've come across here. All of us come at this from different angles. We all are supposed to be working for the common good, at least we were. Now, what's happened is that, a little thing called the internet happened, and what that allowed us to do was, and I'll explain the whole, how we assisted with the internet. It's not as exciting as Al Gore's version of the story. But what that allowed us to do was to create a global fabric a global base for knowledge on this planet so that things could be communicated en masse very quickly and efficiently. That's why I choose to speak in as unaccented English as I possibly can, and that's why I've chosen to use methods like YouTube, because it's very easy to get this information out to people who are trying to find Yahweh, and also to be very mobile in doing so. I just had to go back and record over the ending here because I want to make sure I get this out, and I'll have the other 8 tapes to expand on this. Because by the time you hear this, I will already be gone with Yeshua. We will be deep in negotiations, I would assume, I would hope. And I will need your help. I need every one of you to do something very difficult for me, something that will at times seem impossible. And that is, I need you to be nice to people you come in contact with, especially those who may seem like real jerks to you. Try to beat them up with kindness. Try to speak to people in a more pleasant tone. Try to be more patient with people who drive you nuts. Try to maybe let somebody in line in front of you at the grocery store. Let somebody in getting on the freeway that looks frustrated and frazzled. And the reason I say this is because I have to be able to show them in these negotiations that the people of Earth are, on a base level, good people. These are not barbaric Neanderthals. I guess would be a funny way of saying it from in Earth speak. You're not schmoes. You're not dipwads out there who are just fumbling around in your existence from day to day, doldrum, going to work, going home, flipping on the idiot box, eating a TV dinner, and passing out with a, alcoholic beverage in hand. That's the conventional wisdom, so to speak, that I'm trying to push away from. Now, that's kind of the Western conventional wisdom. Very common in other parts of the world. The conventional wisdom that I have, that I'm up against, is that people don't care about anything other than their day-to-day existence. The first stop I will make will be in Bangladesh, which is one of the densest, if not the most densely populated area on the globe. The way people live there would make any American with a soul cry their eyes out. Any Westerner, for that matter, with a soul, cry your eyes out. These people have nothing. They scrounge around they eat garbage. I'm not lying. It's, I get sidetracked when I think of things like that. One of the things that's going to be difficult for me to explain, to bring Yeshua up to speed on, is how his compassion has been interpreted over the years, and how that he may want to consider, I don't know if there's any way to get that individual to not feel pity for everything around him. That is part of his nature. That's part of why he was chosen. He has the ability to be disarmingly charming when necessary. It is very tough to push up against a wall that never pushes back. And that's what he does. And that's part of why I chose him, is because I have a tendency to get very carried away with myself, get very animated. I consider myself to be very arrogant. I don't say that in a self-damning sense. I say that because I believe I know what is the best course of action to take here. And I am not going to be dissuaded. I won't be. And anything that gets in my way will be stepped over or gone through. And I chose Yeshi because he's going to be the sobering yin to my raging yang. he's going to be the one that says, calm down, Yajweh. You know, we're not at the 11th hour yet. Let's not throw the proverbial baby out with the metaphorical bathwater here. So I am going to finish telling my story in the subsequent 8 tapes. Thanks everybody who's donated at 5sks.com to buy these. Vince is a nice guy, a very poor musician, and the money you donate just basically goes to pay for the discs and the postage and his time for doing this for me. And it's not much. Vince, I very much appreciate it, as always. I'm going to tie things up now for this tape. This is the end of tape 1. Tape 2 is coming. I am going with Vince. We're going to go to Chanhassen, Minnesota, and record at my friend's Prince. He's a well-known musician. His Studio D at Paisley Park. It's kind of back behind the building. Very nice, very secluded, very private. And I will finish out the other 8 there. And by that time, they should let me know when Yeshua comes. And the rest will be, as you say, history. Thank you very much for listening to me. I say this with the most sincere heart.